Welcome to Script Tease, a Blood on the Clocktower Script Building Podcast. I'm your host, Kinky Joe. All right, we're finally down to demons. Demons, the win condition for the good team. Oh man, they give me anxiety when I used to start playing this game. Now I freaking love seeing them. And I think that they probably do the same for you guys. And you know you get that joy when you're on the good team and the game just ends randomly. And you're like, what? We just won, yay. It's like a little dopamine hit. When you consider a given demon's weakness on a script, you want to make sure that the minions and the outsiders have the correct abilities on there to supplement. Most scripts have multiple demons, and that usually requires entirely different solves when you run through that. As seen on the base 3 scripts, you can see how the demons synergize with the roles from the townsfolk, outsiders, and minions. For TB, there's very strong information like the fortune teller and empath. And to combat that, the imp can kill themselves, known as star passing, and move the demon to another player. There's also multiple ways a player can have bad information without being overbearing. What I mean is too much. You'll see that a lot on custom scripts. There's even good roles that play into the strength of the imp being able to kill themselves, such as bluffing Raven Keeper and saying you saw a player as a given role, or you can kill yourself while bluffing a double claim to put suspicion on another player. You can basically do anything you want with that ability. In BMR, the demons have different kill rates and all the minions play around their weaknesses. The DA provides kill power for the Zombuul indirectly by stopping an execution from happening, or the death of it, I should clarify. The Assassin and Godfather provide deaths when kills don't happen and help disguise gossips from being confirmed by the townsfolk. The town has powerful roles that can stop evil in their tracks, like a courtier correctly choosing the demon type, the innkeeper protecting from multiple deaths, or professor even bringing back a player similar to the Shabaloth. Should add a little note on that. I don't think that's a perfect interaction, but we can come back to that in the townsfolk video if we remember. In S&V, you have demons which modify the outsider count and are the primary source of misinformation. Paranoia of the Fang Gu causes outsiders to lie and hide. The Vortox causes all players to get misinformation. No Dashii and Vigormortis can simulate the other two worlds with bluffs and clever storytelling choices. When piecing the puzzle together, town has to consider if the misinfo is from the outsiders, from Zero Madness, evil players lying, or directly from the demon's abilities. So, before we go to our script selection tool, we have to remember it's important when you're considering which demons and minions are paired together that there's enough misinformation in play. Consider the example where there's an Al-hadikhia game, and a fearmonger is announced, and an organ grinder is in play. That night, it's going to be a very loud night too, when everybody realizes all of their information is correct, coming from at least evil abilities. Without some other form of Droison, town knows they can just trust their information. The demon's just one character type on a script, and we need to make sure that it is able to shine. All right, let's jump into our Kinky script selection tool. Okay, we don't have too many categories for demons. A lot of it is carried by the fact that they kill other players, right? So that is most of the main ability of a demon. Obviously, there's some exclusions or exceptions to that, but that is their primary ability. So they make up for that by having something that supplements that or just differentiates them from other demons. So I have the first category on here, similar to the minions, loud or quiet demon. So almost all the demons can be quiet. I just want to point this out because they've had moderate changes to a couple of things. The Al-had has had a might added to its ability. There are some potential things you could do with Leviathan. Depending on how you run it, you are allowed to tell people ahead of the game that you're not going to announce a Leviathan if it's on a script of multiple. That is semi-homebrew at the moment, but it's possible. I don't want to dig too much into it. And then Riot is technically quiet, at least for Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot on night 2. On night 3, well, that's when they turn, right? So night, day 3, yada yada. On that execution day for day 3, that's when they get loud. Circumstantially quiet is a little bit different. I want to go through each of those. So just noting, quiet means that you're not 100% certain that they're in town because the evidence is not there. The Legion are circumstantially quiet because there's nothing telling you directly that it's a Legion based on Legion's abilities, unless only Legion votes and it fails. That is 100% super loud. Lleech has a similar thing where it is quiet until it's not. If you try to execute a Lleech, well, they will not die. and therefore you'll know that it's potentially a Lleech game, or at least give a signal to it. I know there's some combinations of sailors and other roles on script that may affect that, but that is definitely something to keep in mind. All right, our next one that I have marked here as circumstantially quiet is the Poe, and that's a funny one because it's technically quiet. It just gets the option of, you know, bursting down 3 kills. And if it does kill 3, that's gonna be pretty obvious what's going on there. Unless you have very, very specific things on script. Even on BMR, the Poe could be incredibly loud. And that script has all kinds of extra reasons for death. I think the most that you could come up with, besides maybe Acrobat, I think that's the only ability that has death that is BMR-ish, that's not on BMR at the moment. So yeah, Poe can be pretty loud. It also depends on the script makeup, right? I have a script where it's Summoner with Poe, Lord of Typhon, and I think a Fang Gu. And there's nothing else that has multi-kill on there. It's on there specifically to announce itself that, hey, the Poe is in play. Or it's potentially to give pause to town when they get to final 6 or 5 and no kill happened that night. And you're like, uh-oh, Poe charge coming. Poe charge coming. Below that one, we have Riot, we've already talked about. Then Shabaloth. Shabaloth shares a lot of what the Poe does, except Shabaloth even louder due to the regurgitation. I have a hard time putting Shabaloth on scripts due to that regurgitation kind of setback on it. You're almost forced to put a professor in. I will say that this is not an official rule, but I do recommend it. I think even on BMR, you should wake up the Shabaloth night 1, have them choose 2 players. This is officially not official. And choose those 2 players, and that's it. No deaths happen, but they have their tokens down. This allows the Shabaloth to potentially bluff Professor, or at least put some doubt on the Professor's resurrections. Because right now, if you're not familiar, what they do is execute a player for the day 1, and then they immediately try to res them on night 2. And what that leads to is just really toxic gameplay, in my opinion, of, hey, yeah, I'm just a confirmed Professor. It's fine. It's not the worst thing in the world. Right now, storytellers tend to use a pacifist. Anyway, that's a small rant. Yaggababble can be potentially loud or quiet. It's funny because calling it quiet when it's a demon that needs to say stuff to kill is interesting. But it can just not say anything, right? It can just sink. And I've ran into a game like that. It was fucking miserable. But that's okay. It was still something the Yaggababble's allowed to do. But if they do spam their phrase, that's insanely loud, right? A bunch of kills will happen, and potentially on the script it's on, it can be pretty loud. You'll notice a pattern for multi-kill demons where it can be loud. I skipped Oho, but that one could be loud if it wanted to be. Zombuul. Zombuul's interesting because it is technically quiet. There's a couple of instances where it's not. If literally no kills are happening the entire game and executions keep going down, I mean, it's probably a Zombuul, right? Also, if you get to final 2, mechanically, there's only 2 ways that can happen in Clocktower right now, discounting the wizard, is Mastermind and Zombuul. So if those executions, if there's an execution the previous day and you go down to final 2, and yeah, it's extremely loud. Okay, now I have a couple of categories on here that are really only relevant, and you've seen these on the previous ones, and they'll be on the next one as well. But they're really only relevant for specific roles at the moment, or Amni, right? Amni is always available as a thing that matters. But Wake Pattern, that's for the Chambermaid, and then Selection, so Night Choosing is what I have on here. That helps for a few different things, a little bit more, but it's mainly Goon relevant, right? So what I have on this category is, if it's Storyteller chosen, that means that they're not selecting the Goon, meaning that the Goon cannot turn evil and Droison the demon, they just die. So going through those real quick, we have Legion, Lil Monsta, technically the Oho, and it can choose. So for the Goon, if it chooses Goon, sure, it triggers, but Storyteller would not be the Oho choosing, therefore the Goon could die via the Oho's ability. It's a weird one. It's a weird one, but that's how I would rule that. I'm pretty sure that's accurate. The Poe, wait, down to the bottom, Yaggababble is the last one that Storyteller chosen kills. And I'm gonna throw, this is another custom rule. Again, this is not for script building, this is more for running games. I do like talking about it though. So for any roles, we'll skip Lil Monsta and Legion, but let's say for now let's just say Yaggababble. So for Yaggababble specifically, don't worry about any of the other ones. I don't mind waking up the demon, telling them how many kills I'm allowing them to do, and letting them choose. That gives more agency to them. I know it's a little more complex, and I think that that's probably why it doesn't exists currently as the normal ability. But I am a fan of agency for the players for the most part. And I think that this allows you to open up more script room, right? Like protection rolls, they just don't matter with the Yagga directly, right? You'd have other rolls on script. But like if a Yagga is trying to kill through an Innkeeper protection, it doesn't matter. As the storyteller, you should just not be picking them. However, if the players know that that's possible, it's possible the Yagga to just nail Innkeeper selections all night. And remember, you're not giving them every kill. You're giving them whatever kills you think they've earned for that night or day. And that's that. You can still simulate the witch stuff, and maybe that burns all the kills and you just don't wake them up that night. And I would not count this as waking up either. This is just a custom situation. Okay? Going back to wake patterns real quick, because most of them follow the same, but very relevant that a few of these do wake on night one, right? And they're not all obvious suspects, but the Pukka and the Lleech, those are the two that everybody's aware of. Yaggababble, a lot of people forget, wakes night one. That is a waking thing to learn its ability. The Zombuul is awkward with when it wakes, right? It only wakes on each night asterisk if a player was not executed. Sorry, not even that. They only wake if a player didn't die. And then going back up to Kazali, that does count, in my opinion, as waking for their ability to choose their team. I know it's during setup and it's kind of a gray area. Talk to your STs. That's what you'll hear from TPI on this one. I'm sure of it. So that's just something that you guys need to be aware of. For Droison on this one, there's not that many demons that cause direct misinformation. It's kind of surprising when you lay it out on paper. Going through it, there's only 4 demons that Droison directly, right? That's the Lleech, the Dashii, the Pukka, the Vigormortis. And that's actually a good set of demons as well to put on a script. I actually have a script built around those 4. It was with the old Acrobat, when the Acrobat used to be an outsider. It no longer works as well, I don't think, but that's fine. And then finally, I have Vortox under here as unique. It's not Droison, right? Not by definition, but it does create misinformation, and this category kind of collects it all. So I put unique in here because it requires all townsfolk to get false information. Vortox has a lot of fun synergies that we'll talk about as well. The next category is kill rate. So this will be very useful on a script where you're trying to come up with different kill rates for your demons to mix in gossips and other roles that townsfolk and outsiders may create kills on. So you can pick between, because you could tell even on BMR, you have 4 different kill patterns and it still works as a great script. So having this many different kill patterns is kind of wild. And it's interesting. So what I did on here with the zeros versus the multiple versus whatever, the ones that say 0 or multiple mean that you can both choose not to kill anyone, or multiple players can die. So that means 1 as well. That collects the 1 in there awkwardly. But there is a specific instance, that's the Poe, where it's 0, single, multiple, because they literally can choose all 3 of those, with the prescribed order of things. Obviously, you get the Leviathan that does not kill. You've got Riot that has a unique way that they kill, because they don't kill at night. They kill during the day during knobs. New Riot is a lot more interesting for me. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the pairings and just Riot in general, final thoughts stuff. The other one on here so there's a couple like Oho and Yaggababble. I see a lot of similarities between the Oho and the Yaggababble. Honestly, in my opinion, when it comes to the fact that they're very similar, I just give the edge to the Yaggababble. I think it could do everything the Oho can do, plus more, like simulating golems and harpy madness and witch stuff, and a couple of other things too that I don't want to dig into too much. But then you have Legion, which can simulate basically most of the demons on script that aren't loud, which is fun to learn when you have a lot of players that you storytell for that don't like Legion. So be careful with just throwing Legion on a script, even though it can match the kill rate of a lot of different demons. All right, evil survival. So in this category for the demons themselves, it's mainly demon survival, but potentially it extends the game, it has demon movement, or it protects the demon from death. A couple of obvious ones on here, the Fang Gu and the Imp. Those ones are amazing. Top tier demons when it comes down to how they can interact with different script stuff, as well as their power level in general. So both the Fang Gu and the Imp can move, right, and create a new demon. You go down one to the Legion, that one's got demon survival because you technically really can't win against Legion until almost like final 3. And that's just the way that the games go. But the uniqueness there is that, yeah, you can't just kill one evil player and win. It doesn't matter which one. Then you have Lil Monsta, where the demon can move literally every day. That's very strong. The Lleech cannot die unless the Lleech host is killed. Riot is very weird. Riot is not Legion-ish anymore. I'm almost tempted to change this to no. But the demon survival would be the fact that on the third day when nominations are happening, all of the evil team, well, all of the minions anyway, will be Riot now. So that is up to, in a 12-player game, 3 Riot that could be in play. And then finally we have the Zombuul, which has built-in extra life, is probably the easiest way to put it. Okay, for the win conditions, I was surprised to only see a couple on here. But you have the Leviathan, where the win condition is literally the whole demon, right? They don't kill, and that's just their thing. I'm going to skip down to the Vortox, where its win condition is very much because of the nature of S&V. So in Sex and Violets, if you don't execute on a given day, then the roles at night will receive a lot of very strong information. An Oracle might receive information that cannot mechanically work somehow, right? And that is mainly the reason for the Vortox having this win condition that exists, is forcing the good team to kill things and nom and vote so that the good team does not have free Vortox detection. So it helps itself out. It's kind of interesting. And then you have Riot in here, where the win condition is just nomming. So it's I don't even know if this is a different win condition necessarily, because you're just nomming to kill. But yeah, it's probably close enough. It's in the weird territory. Again, Unique has covered a lot of bases here. It's doing the work for me. I don't really need to think about it too much. Okay, then we have Outsider modification, and holy moly, it's good that they added a couple of more, because there were not a lot of demons with Outsider mod. It was basically Sex and Violets for the longest time, Fang Gu and Vigormortis. Recently, though, they've added a bunch of demons, a couple of demons that can really satisfy some of the script gaps that have existed out there in the wild. So we have Legion. Legion can modify the count in general. It's kind of an arbitrary townsfolk outsider situation. For storytellers out there, it is encouraged that you do not put outsiders in a Legion game if you can help it. Know your team, right? I don't follow that at all, but I know my players that are playing the game, so I make sure that it's fun and balanced for them as much as possible. Plus, my evil win rate's like super, super high, and that's probably a part of why. So don't do what I do. It's not good. It's bad. You're bad. But then they added these 2 other demons. They added the Kazali and the Lord of Typhon, which have saved a lot of people from adding Fang Gu to every script. And I will tell you, Fang Gu does not work on every script because it adds an additional evil, which leads you down a whole rabbit hole of problems. So Lord of Typhon kind of does that as well. But Kazali just lets you have any amount of outsiders. Okay? There's a lot of discussion I'll probably have on the Kazali when we get to the next section, but that is pretty strong in and of itself. And then the Lord of Typhon adds an extra evil and outsider count modification stuff. So you can go all the way down with this, kind of modify the 2 in an opposite direction. Just generalizing it, Lord of Typhon should generally probably lose outsiders if you're going to modify it, and Kazali could go up in outsiders if you're going to modify it. Yeah. They do have interesting abilities outside of that. Okay, now we're in our final little section here where I'm going to talk through each of the demons kind of in depth as much as I can. So we have the Al-hadikhia. Al-hadikhia is such a interesting demon that, to my understanding, might be on a script with other loud demons. I guess that works. I'm not solely sold on it. I don't know. I have not played that script that exists. I know it's on a very notable script called Midnight Oasis, which is an atheist script, so it tends to work there just because there's question marks around, is an atheist in play, and it's also got synergy with the Vigormortis. This is not a Midnight Oasis glazing session, but that is a very, very well-designed script. So if you guys have not tried that one, that's probably a good representation of just how the Al-had goes in general. When it comes to script building, if you want to try outside the box things, look at that one. So what is interesting to put with an Al-had? Well, because the Al-hadikhia is incredibly loud, and because the Al-hadikhia is likely to be on a script by itself, I have tried to think of roles that work really well with that. Also, the choosing whether you want to live or die is really, really interesting as well. Right? Everything's just interesting. I don't know. So looking at it, the Hatter, I think the Hatter works okay with the Al-hadikhia, but keep in mind it's Hatter with Super Hatter. So this is Chaos Hatter, whatever you want to call it, the Super Barber version of it, where you can switch demons and minions, whoever wants to be what. I think I've got a script that's got that built into it. I'll have me at hello, and I just like it. There's a Vizier on there too that might be coloring this a little bit, because you can't just swap a Vizier with a Barber swap. Otherwise, a new Vizier will be announced, and that's not good. I also think that because the Al-hadikhia has no functional misinfo, Poisoner is just usually good with that. Poisoner, Widow, something along those lines. I think this is one of the few demons where the king is interesting by itself without a choir boy. I would still encourage a choir boy on there, but when you have a choir boy and a king on that script, man, the questions the king goes through every night. The king can choose to stay alive, so even if the demon knows who the king is, that might just be confirming the king every night when they keep picking him. And then the king can play around that, and if they think there's a choir boy in play, they can just choose to die. That's wild. That's interesting. It gives a lot of back and forth play with each other. It's also good to have a lot of roles on script that do not want to die when it comes to the Al-hadikhia. I think that if you put a lot of like Raven Keepers and you put Banshee on there, you're asking for trouble. In fact, let's look at our rough pairing. All right, I couldn't fit it in here, I guess, but let me add it. So Banshee, etc. So Demon's Banes in an Al-had can be very unbalancing in themselves, right? Demon's Banes, because the Al-had has to pick 3 different players, they are going to hit a Demon's Bane eventually. It's just how it is. It can be okay, though. I just think that maybe a Banshee, a little too much. A Raven Keeper, a little strong as well, but probably okay. I have other demons written on here. That's because I do think Al-had works really well as a solo demon. I think that if you're just making a script and you're looking for a solo demon, Al-had's a great one to choose and run with. There's so many different directions you can take it. I think the Monk is a weird one on the Al-had scripts, but it can work. So if you don't know exactly how an Al-had works, they choose 3 players. Those players get to choose live or die in order. And if at the end of that time, if all live, then all die. A monk can muck that up. I'd kind of hard confirm themselves. It's not bad. It's just rough, and you need to understand that when you're going in, because it's similar to an innkeeper. It's similar to a tea lady, which I actually think are fun and interesting ways to build that script. I just have it here because you can throw that on there and just the monk just hard confirms itself and protects people and keeps them alive. Then you have Exorcist on here. So I mentioned the Al-hadikhia has added a might ability to its role. I don't think that you should use that most of the time. The Exorcist can work with that. That is incredibly niche, and it requires the Al-had to basically skip nights, and it also requires you to build around an Exorcist, meaning other roles that can kill, things like that. I'm not a fan, so don't do it. I don't think Exorcist Al-had is good. I think the Goon is also rough, but it is a trade-off. So if the Al-hadikhia chooses the Goon, no deaths happen that night. No announcement even goes out. It's kind of crazy. So you just know that a Goon was selected. Oopsie daisy. Yeah. I guess it's a signal for town. It's kind of funny. If your gimmick is that, I think I'd play your script. That's just funny. Also, the other 2 on here that I have are just, it's kind of like a warning for script writers out there. A Scarlet Woman and a DA. Those are incredibly strong. Scarlet Woman has a jinx built into it with the Al-hadikhia where you can just kind of cycle and keep them alive as out of evil. I think you can play around this. That's why it's rough. It's not like, you know, don't ever do this. I think you can, but it's strong. And the DA falls into a similar category. There is one thing with the DA. The DA chooses protections before kills happen. So it is possible that, you know, their DA gets resurrected. They haven't chosen anybody. They don't have an ability. The problem always for town when it comes to these resurrections from the Al-had is chasing after minions versus the demon, right? And so the DA is probably safer than a Scarlet Woman. But when a Scarlet Woman is revived and the demon is out there, you're back to having 2 different characters you have to execute, even if you know who they are. And they can just do this every day. Again, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world because good can play around this, knowing when to choose to live or choose to die. But I can envision a world where the Scarlet Woman is just broken and nobody's enjoying that game. And I think that's going to happen more often than not on a given script. Right, the Fang Gu. I love the Fang Gu. I think Fang Gu is such a well-designed demon. The fact that it does a lot of what other demons want to do is kind of crazy. So the Fang Gu, first off, it doesn't have a lot going on in its ability text, right? It kills and then it can jump to another outsider. There's so many layers to that. First off, outsiders are now extra win conditions for the good team in a way, right? So if you jump to an outsider and they kill that outsider, they win. So not only are they killing evil players day to day, but you could get away with multiple days of the good team saying, I would like to execute, this known outsider over here. I think that's going to protect us from a Fang Gu jump. That's not an evil player being executed. That's good. That's really powerful. It also adds an extra outsider. So it adds, it removes a townsfolk role. It could be potentially solving the game. And because of that, adding an extra outsider, you get a lot more play with outsiders on that script. It also adds an extra evil to your team, which is more voting power, and it creates a lot of suspicion over players who die at night. Now, with the fact that the outsiders are hiding and lying as well, there's more misinformation going around. Everybody is lying. That's Fang Gu and S&V are together. It's so smart. And it's not mechanically required that these rules lie. It's natural. It's a meta that occurs due to multiple plays of seeing you getting accidentally jumped to and getting executed and losing. It feels bad. And you're like, oh, I could have just lied. So it's encouraging and it's kind of cool. Now it has some really interesting pairings. I think a lot of them are, demon movement related and stuff like that. But like Hatter, Barber, those are both good. Plague Doctor is great on there. Roles that don't want to die, but you gotta kill them because the Fang Gu might jump to them. Any roles that don't want to die, those are great outsiders. Oracle's really good synergy because Fang Gu jumps eventually, hopefully, or they probably lost. Golem is really good because it has to make a choice, right? Golem is a tough cookie to write a script around until, more recently with the ability to buff in Harpy, Yaga. But the Golem previously had to have some kind of fear of being Fang Gu jumped to or some other like atheist type situation happening. I know they were discussing doing like a Golem psychopath thing that never came to fruition, at least as of this video. But I think that making that choice very difficult for the Golem is really smart. I think the Fang Gu with the Monk is really good because the Monk can protect outsiders or the Fang Gu itself. That can lead to some weird games where the Fang Gu cannot jump because it cannot die, but the outsider still dies. And now nobody thinks it's a Fang Gu game. Raven Keeper, things that can bluff that they jump, like Sage, etc. And Fortune Teller is an obvious one to add in there because you do have a lot going on. All of the stuff I just said is all true and great things about the Fang Gu, but you do need to have counters for it. So that's why I had Oracle and Fortune Teller. I think those are great counters and great synergy for a Fang Gu. Now, rough on there are mainly the three outsiders that can turn evil one way or another. I've seen these on a lot of scripts. You guys like your ogres, your goons, your politicians. You also like your Fang Gus. I think you should like them in two different rooms. I don't think that they're friendly together. I don't think they should be hanging out like they are. Okay? Basically anything that adds evil. So I can even add like Bounty Hunter here, etc. Okay? Don't do it. Now, there's a way to make Bounty Hunter work, because I've seen it on a lot of scripts. It's even on one of my favorite scripts, Blurred Lines. Main way to make that work is to have a drunk on script. And in fact, drunk is a great synergy for the Fang Gu as well. So, you know what? We got room. Let's write it. The drunk Bounty Hunter and the Fang Gu in a dance is so good. Because the Fang Gu is likely to know that the Bounty Hunter is not real. And if they're outing it, they're going to be a prime drunk candidate for them. I think I captured everything, but yeah, avoid extra evils, and then the demon can move. So build around that. Now, I do have a solo Fang Gu script. I don't think it's perfect. I think it's hard to make a solo Fang Gu script just because it's got so much misinfo and so many people are not getting info as well. It's kind of a tricky one to build around. All right, everybody's favorite top tier demon, the Imp. So strong, so pretty, so powerful. The Imp basically has a lot of what the Fang Gu does, but removing all the outsider portion of it. So the Imp doesn't get extra evils, doesn't add an outsider. It can move around multiple times though. And the fact that you can just choose when to do this is very powerful. It gives you a couple of outs, right? Most evil rolls, once they get discovered, they're kind of cooked, right? The Imp, if they can manage to get a tie vote, they can bail out, right? They can give a Irish goodbye and give it off to the next evil minion on the team to become the demon. So the Imp is great. It's a single kill demon, but it can work on literally most scripts. I don't think that I've seen scripts that are built just a generic script, right? They couldn't have an Imp on there instead of another demon, right? Even SMV, you can remove probably Vigormortis or Fang Gu and just throw an Imp on there and it worked mostly the same, right? Maybe not Fang Gu just due to the outsider situation, but yeah, I don't even think I need to really talk on that. A lot of the stuff that can bluff Night Deaths, that is same, right? Same kind of synergy. So put those on a script together. It's great. Oh, also minions. Let's talk through minions real quick with the Imp, because I think the Imp can use poisoning, right? I think that's why Trouble Brewing is so good. It's got the right synergies on there with quiet minions. So I've seen Imp Vizier work. It is a fun gamble because Town can try to kill the Vizier every day if they're not using their ability, thinking that they jumped into him. I don't think that there's any minions that can't work with an Imp. I think you just got to build around it. Maybe have other demons to help you out. But yeah, I just think that it works. I mean, you'll probably see the most solo demon scripts come from the Imp on it. All right, the Kazali. So my server especially loves the Kazali. This is probably one of their favorite demons. I'm not as hot on it, but I do like it. I think it's really strong. Talking through it real quick, the Kazali's ability to both modify outsider count. The Kazali can give their minions bluffs for free, which is incredible, right? Now you don't have people out there double claiming by accident. They have the option to choose how they'd like to play that out. And then choosing your own team is incredibly powerful as well. It adds a meta layer on top of it. And then of course you get your own bluffs, but that's kind of where it ends. And to me, that at first didn't feel as interesting, but then if you start adding in different minion selection, here's my issue with the Kazali that it comes down to. I do think that the minion selection in a Kazali script, and I'm talking mainly about solo Kazali, and we'll come back to non-solo Kazali in a minute. I think it's really hard to build a minion selection that doesn't involve Scarlet Woman, maybe a Poisoner or something along those lines, as like a requirement. But if you add things like Mezephiles, you add things like Pit Hag and Wizard, you're just going to get the strongest ones chosen every game. The meta is going to become super stale. Take this example. We have a Witch, we have a Goblin, we have a Mezephiles, and we have a Pit Hag. Wonder what you're picking. Yeah, because one of them can do the job of the other three. And then, of course, you just want to get an evil player right off the bat with the Mez. So you can swap to any of them. It's tough. That's going to be your biggest challenge building a script with a Kazali. So balanced minion selection. I also think, and I'm a fan of this, I've heard other storytellers not as well, but you know, hear me out on this. Drunk on a Kazali script. Again, I don't think Kazali is that powerful. I actually think Kazali is, you know, its abilities spent pretty quickly, and the not having to worry about double claims is fine. But I think having an ability to have a drunk placed after setup, after minions have been selected, helps the Kazali so much. I really think this should be the standard for the Kazali, is just having a drunk on script and being able to place it if needed to balance out the minion selection. But I'm also kind of a masochist, so maybe don't take my opinion as gospel, but it has helped quite a bit, especially if you have a lunatic, and I mean this as a person, who chooses both their neighbors with a chef on script and getting chef too, and one of those neighbors is a boom dandy. I think it's pretty smart at that point to maybe drunk the chef. I don't know. I know you could say skill issue, but it's just led to more interesting games, and I think a floating drunk is always useful. Moving on from that, and by floating drunk, I mean before, you know, after tokens have been handed out, after the minion's been selected, put it on somebody. rough pairings on it because two of these just don't work functionally. Poppy Grow the Magician, I'm not going to explain too much, but the demon literally chose their minions. There's no reason that these should be on a script together unless you have some custom rule for it. And then a Baron. We've already mentioned the outsider count is modified at setup, at start, at bag. And the Baron's not put in the bag, so why even... This minion's not doing anything, so don't add it on the script. Marionette's also a funky one. It's okay if you want to add it on there. It'll almost never be selected by the Kazali, I don't believe. It can. It's like playing hard mode, right? If you got the option between a Poisoner, Scarlet Woman, and a Marionette, you're going to pick the other two most games, I think. Yeah, minions on this script need to be your focus. So when you're building a Kazali script, minions should be your focus. But let's talk about other demons. So if you want to use the Kazali with other demons, I think that's okay. I've come around to it. Originally, I thought Kazali by itself is kind of interesting. I've become less and less of a curmudgeon when it comes to outsiders being solvable. I think that with the added Lord of Typhon, we got a Zon, we've got Kazali. Those have really changed the game when it comes to solving outsider count directly. I don't think that it's a requirement anymore. Right? I think that it's part of it. I think that it should give you a hint towards it, but I don't think it's absolutely needed at this point or at this stage of the meta when it comes to building stuff. So yeah, that's what Kazali will do for your scripts as a multi-demon script. If you put Kazali on there, it can carry the load of having outsider bluffs for non-Kazali demons. You're like, oh, it's a Kazali game. Maybe you have a Kazali Vortox and there's 4 outsider claims. Should be a Kazali, right? But it could just be 2 evils bluffing in a 12-player game. I think that's fine. I think that that's an okay use of the Kazali. It also does have that whole like minions have their bluff situation, which again, I'm underselling. I think it is actually super powerful. It's just, I don't know. I like having the struggle of being a minion and trying to find bluffs. But yeah, that's fine. All right, Legion. A lot of people do not like you. I don't know why. I think we should be closer together. I think we should be friendos. So the Legion is really, really strong to build scripts around. And I mean that in such a way that it's actually a really robust demon. There's a lot you can do with Legion as long as you build the script correctly. So first note I have on here is really important. If you have loud minions with Legion, people already know it's not a Legion game. So scrap that idea altogether. Now, you might be building that with, I guess, those things in mind, and you want that to be okay. Maybe you have a summoner on script. Maybe you have Pit Hag. I don't know. You have something like a Plague Doctor or something. If it becomes relevant, maybe that's fine. Like if you set your script up in such a way where that's a feature of it and not a bug, then yeah, I guess that's probably okay. But it will solve Legion pretty quickly, and if you're not okay with that, then avoid that. Alchemist, Plague Doctor, things like that also helps kind of hide Legion for a bit. Engineer is weird and interesting with it. I'm not a fan of Engineer at all, so it is an okay synergy though on the right script, because what it does, it's a great bluff for evil, and if the Engineer itself is in play, they know that it's not a Legion game, so it at least gives a hint at some level. Again, I don't really like Engineer, so maybe this is misplaced. Savant's really strong for helping solve Legion. Things that get information are really, really strong, right? Mutant is also really interesting for Legion because you're going to have double claims. And again, this isn't just about what's in play, it's about what's on script, because you need to have outs for the evil team. All right? They're going to be dying more than the good team, so they need stuff that they can out when they're dead. A mutant saying, or a Legion, I should say, bluffing mutant when they're dead. Say, oh yeah, I was the mutant, that's why I was claiming this. Yeah, I think that's strong. I think that's useful. Now, I don't like execution survival with Legion. I think it's too rough on Legion. That player who survives is never Legion, and likely never to be it depends on the script, right? It could be a DA situation, but it does not really help the worlds that you're building. So I'm not a fan of that. Execution survival Legion, no. That's my biggest no on that one, I think. And then, certain minions, I guess this is where we put loud minions, but we kind of put quiet minions in the other section. So you would think it's obvious, but let's write it. And then low claim space promotes double claims. So if you are going to set, what does this mean, right? This sentence. What this means is if you set your script up with low claim space, people are more likely to always think it's a Legion game. And if you give a lot of room for it, like VI and such, then people are less likely to think it's a Legion game, especially if people have unique bluffs. And they're actually creating worlds that make sense. All right, moving down to Leviathan, which is another demon. I think our second one we've run into so far that can be that's usually on a solo script by itself without any other demons. I think Leviathan has very unique interactions when it comes to execution rolls and win conditions. So some of the interesting pairings I see are like Goblin, which is one of the forms of survival on a Leviathan script is just claiming Goblin. Because a lot of people are going to want to execute. It can also be very loud on the wrong situation. If nobody else is claiming Goblin and you've got a lot of info pointing at you, you might either be the Goblin or the Demon. But I think it's an okay synergy with it. The Mutant is really, really cool on Leviathan scripts. Usually the Mutant only pairs well with a Cerenovus on script. But Leviathan actually works with the Mutant because they only can do 2 good executions before the game ends for the evil team. As soon as that second execution happens, GG, go next, as the kids say. So the Mutant puts a extra stress layer on top for that player to actually commit. More risk and more investment than even Sex and Violence, its home script. Cerenovus runs into a similar positive for Leviathan scripts where you're having other players having to commit pretty hard to the madness or use up one of the executions. Damsel's strong because executions are rare in Leviathan scripts. You usually get like 2, maybe 3 per game, and a damsel does not want to be alive. So it's great that the damsel is now forced to basically be alive. They can't look too evil, or the evil team's gonna guess them. They can't look, they can't run into a double claim because then the evil team's gonna guess them. So having that kind of synergy with the minions on script is interesting and cool. Because you will run into scripts where the damsel can just kind of play casually first night info, roll, and die, and then it does nothing for the game. It's trapped on a Leviathan script. I think Savant, basically strong rolls. That's what the Savant's covering for, strong info rolls on there. But specifically the Savant, because you can tailor your info for the state of the game. I don't think necessarily demon finding rolls are super, super good with Leviathan, but they can be. Just not too many, right? I think certain ones are kind of broken depending on your script. If you have a Flower Girl on there, that's pretty strong as long as people are voting, because you really can't move the demon. If you have a Fortune Teller, that's probably also very, very strong. They get almost 5 days of info depending on what kind of Droisoning minions you got on there. That's pretty strong. Also, from other roles we have on here is Lunatic. Lunatic with Leviathan is great because the Lunatic will not know right away. And if you add in things like a Magician on there, which also synergizes with regular Leviathan, they are not going to know for a while because they're going to have to solve that puzzle of, hey, are you one of my minions or just, POS Magician guy? And then finally, Marionette. Marionette with Leviathan allows you to have another form of misinformation, but it also stops your neighbors from voting on you potentially. Some rough pairings on there are things that cause death, Assassins, Godfathers. I think Harpy's even kind of bad. Roles that will eliminate potential demons are not good for Leviathan. You need a lot of potential demons from the evil side. Scarlet Woman, terrible. Do not put Scarlet Woman on your Leviathan scripts. If you execute the Leviathan and the game doesn't end, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave the game. I'm never going to play out your script again. Same thing with like a Mastermind. That's kind of silly, more silly. Just don't. Trigger on death abilities are also kind of weird. You get like Raven Keeper and such. There are jinxes now with it. I don't like it. I think there's a jinx anyway. I'm not 100% remembering. But anyway, don't put those on these scripts. They're wonky. They don't play very well. Boom Dandy is also pretty bad. Boom Dandy allows the good team basically a free shot at the demon based on a lot of info. It goes from, in a 12-player game, we'll say it goes from about, 11 other possibilities, and they do not get to kill down to the final three, which is too strong. That's too strong. Don't put this on script. Goblin's much better if you're going to go that route, at least for that kind of survival stuff. This is probably the only demon where the difference between Boom Dandy and Goblin mattered the most. All right, Lil Monsta. Lil Monsta is so interesting because it does something that only one other demon right now does. It adds an extra minion ability. That means it synergizes super, super well with loud minions. If you have potentially a script where you have a Vizier, a Widow, and another minion that like maybe the other two are quiet, if a Vizier goes off and a Widow Call goes out, most games, 12-player games, you already know the whole evil team, right? That you know it's a Vizier, you know it's a Widow, you know it's one of the demons. With a Lil Monsta on script, it allows you to hide potentially a third minion ability. So it makes it so people can lie more and there's an extra world out there. I love that. I think that more demons need to exist like that. The other one is Lord of Typhon, by the way. But I think that's the strongest thing about Lil Monsta that goes unchecked. It's great from that perspective for script building. I do think it's hard to build a really good script around Lil Monsta. It's kind of needs a lot of information. It also needs a good amount of droisoning to keep at it. Because over time, the evil team is going to die off. The storyteller is going to kill the evil team. So you need to be, like, I guess, balanced with it, which you should be doing anyway. But the Lil Monsta really feels bad if you get late in the game and you got to choose between one of the evil players and all the good team thinks it's both of those players. So with that, some of the other roles on script that are going to help you solve that problem is adding other demons that move, a Fang Gu and an Imp, right? A lot of minions we talked about. Snitch. Snitch helps a lot because now you have bluffs. Maybe a Spy or a Widow. Then you don't need a Snitch, right? That's another reason for bluffs being out there in the evil team. I think Fortune Teller, Oracle are really, really good and useful because the demon moves so much. I also believe that, I don't have it on here, but you know we should add it. Poppy Grower. Poppy Grower is really good in Lil Monsta. They can still kind of participate in the game, but it just works. It's fun synergy with it. Rough pairings for the Lil Monsta DA. I think DA is a little weird. So rules as written, the DA can continue to protect the baby if you just keep moving the baby and moving the DA. I know most people, most storytellers run a custom way for the DA where they do not allow a double protect, which is smart. Meaning, all right, I, Kinky Joe, get the baby and then I hand it off to Alexis, but I was DA protected. Now I'm going to protect Alexis. Baby's been protected twice. That would be a no. So you cannot protect Alexis, and I couldn't choose myself again. So it's more restrictive for the DA, but I actually think it makes the DA actually viable. Otherwise, it's just too strong. You got to kill the DA before you kill the baby. I don't love that, especially when you know where they're at. Double tapping should be okay with DA. Barber and Hatter, they're okay. They don't really do too much. The reason that Hatter is kind of, I mean, again, these are rough just because they're rough. It's just a lot of demon movement when you already have a Lil Monsta on there, potentially. With other roles, I think they're probably okay. They just don't do much, right? A Barber swap can work if you're trying to bring an evil player back in, like maybe a minion ability got killed early and you want them back. A Hatter can change the demon, which can be incredibly rough late game. So let's say you have a Hatter and you have two evils, right? Still alive. The Hatter dies, and then they change out so that one of them is now a demon with the Hatter ability. You don't get a chance to kill one of the other evils, which the whole game was based around. So they've escaped, and they've set up the game in such a way where it's really, really hard for the good team because Lil Monsta moves so much. Maybe that's okay. It really depends on the scenario, the script. Depends on a few things. Pit Hag, literally the same exact thing, except you can straight up just kill the other minions. So that one's a little easier. And then Scarlet Woman. Scarlet Woman's just toxic with Lil Monsta. It's not terrible, but just in case you're not aware, you can keep handing the baby to the good team and then keep getting executed, keep getting good players executed every other day. Because there's a jinx where the Scarlet Woman will then take the baby and they have to hold it that night. But it's just toxic gameplay, to be honest. You know, it's funny. I just realized I was reading the Lleech one the entire time, but I stand by most of these. I think Barber is, you know, whatever. Hatter. I'm going to leave them on there. I think this is fine. You can ignore most of those, but I did want to point those out because that is a theme. So moving down to Lleech. Lleech is really, really cool if you have more droids that got the script for sure. So make sure that it's not obvious who's getting the bad info. You can do that a couple of different ways. Puzzle Master, Drunk, Poisoner. I think those are fun options for it. You can also have other demons on script that create question marks on info. I think Lleech, I have a Lleech Legion script, and I'm not going to go into a whole rant on it, but I do think that these two work incredibly well. In a Legion game, good players don't want to die. They don't want to kill themselves, right? They don't want to vote on themselves at all. In a Lleech game, it's very likely that the good team has been hosted and they will have to die. So the synergy back and forth between those two is really, really cool. I like it. Might not be your cup of tea, but I do think it's great. And I think Boom Dandy is also good with Lleech because good players are trying to die. Boom Dandy will blow up. And it's quiet too. They don't have to announce, hey, I'm the Boom Dandy. It just happens. It's also a good bluff for the Lleech as well. Rough pairings. You know, I kind of read through a lot of these, funny enough, but let's go through them again. I think DA Lleech, a little toxic. Oh yeah, let's add this up here. Because I do actually believe in what I said, even though I didn't have it written. DA, Barber, Hatter, a lot of that applies because of the whole Lleech host scenario. So you're not trying to kill the demon in a Lleech game, you're trying to kill the Lleech host. These things really affect your ability to do that as a good team in a very negative way. So DA can squat on a Lleech host, and you're trying to find the Lleech, right? So you're double tapping a lot just to find a Lleech or a Lleech host. And I think you only get so many days in a game, and unless you built your script around protection at night, this isn't going to be a fun time for the good team. Barber and Hatter run into a problem of Lleech host movement. I don't like Lleech host movement. In fact, all four of the next ones are. Barber, Hatter, Pit Hag, Scarlet Woman. If you can move your Lleech host, you're more likely to just win, right? Because it comes a random guess fest on it. On night one, at least there's puzzles that you can solve throughout the game to figure it out. I don't like that. I don't think it works together. I do think that Scarlet Woman has a chance or potential as long as you use a special jinx. So the jinx I run is Scarlet Woman if it's in a Pit Hag game. A Scarlet Woman with a Lleech. The way that I run that is if the Lleech host is killed, then the Scarlet Woman, similar to how you need 5 or more players left, the Scarlet Woman becomes the Lleech host. So it does give an extra life to the evil team, and it gives a reason for the Scarlet Woman to stay alive, just like a normal game with an evil team. I think that actually makes Scarlet Woman work really well. But again, custom rule, you can't expect your players to do that. But again, this is why we do write-ups. The Lord of Typhon, very, very good. I love Lord of Typhon Summoner. This is a great demon that they just added out of nowhere. Lord of Typhon has such good synergy with Summoner, with the Marionette, Spy. Make sure you got other demons on there, of course. And why is that? Holy moly, if you find one evil in a Lord of Typhon script, you found the whole team. And this, we actually ran a Jinn game the other day. It was by Cute Mage, very fun script where all the minions were marionettes. And almost immediately, a couple of players found some evil. Now, that was an interesting script with the gimmick of the all minions are marionettes, so a lot of people didn't trust their info, but they just wouldn't vote on their neighbors. The problem with that is, yeah, literally, they solved the evil team maybe like 3 days before the end of the game, and they could just kill into them. I don't like that. I don't like this synergy of not having other demons with Lord of Typhon. I think it absolutely needs it. But the Summoner Jinx with it is really, really cool, where you get to add another minion in the game based on who you pick. All right, the rough pairings, I mentioned a couple kind of indirectly. The Chef, holy moly, that just kind of tells you where the action's at. It's okay if you have a drunk or other reasons for the Chef to get bad info. The Chef works if you have a Spy on script as well, right? That screws up the Chef number because you can put that in between the set and make the number lower. Also, Organ Grinder and Extra Evils, right? Things that, so Extra Evils is obvious because you get an Extra Evil with the Lord of Typhon. But the Organ Grinder is maybe too strong with all the voting that's happening. I think it's important for the good team to be able to solve some of that. And, it's rough. It's not bad. Could be bad. It's something you need to build your script around. The No Dashii, lots of good synergies with the No Dashii. There's a very strong script, right, for the No Dashii called Extension Cord by Vivo Sam. And it's got a lot of good roles on there. These are kind of my take. This is not an end-all be-all. It's just an overall very fun demon to build into. Marionette, because they Droison both their neighbors, you can kind of gaslight somebody. Empath, because if you're an empath in a No Dashii game, you have no idea if your neighbors are good or evil. Even it doesn't matter what your number is. It really doesn't. The Shigenja is interesting because the Shigenja can actually point towards a No Dashii where an empath can't. Right? If they're 1 seat away, they can look right at the No Dashii. The empath totally misses it. Scarlet Woman is really good. Ooh, I missed a little comment. So you can move the Droison around from the No Dashii. And then a Barber, same thing as Scarlet Woman, so you can move it around. I think that what's rough for No Dashii is when they have a neighbor next to them that's mechanically confirmable. That could be rough. I've had Philo Golem games where they go to punch and nothing happens, and then, oops, need to kill my neighbors. That makes it rough. I think Baron is a little bit overbearing because it adds so many outsiders with your base game. It can be a little rough. That's just a lot of misinfo along with your 2 neighbors who are already Droison. So you just almost get no info in that game. It's probably okay. It's just something to keep in mind. All right, the Oho. I hate this demon. Not a fan of it. I guess I'll talk through why. But it works really well with certain roles like Gossip on scripts. You can bluff it. It's got, I think, synergy with multiple strong townsfolk, right? You're trying to choose them to kill them. And if you just have a fortune teller and a bunch of star knowing rolls, probably going to kill the fortune teller first. And it works really, really well with Lunatic because of the whole Lunatic doesn't actually know who's supposed to die necessarily, right? They pick a role and they wake up and someone died and they're just like, oh, I don't know. Did I do that? So that's good. Why don't I like the Oho, right? Well, the Oho itself is kind of boring, right? It chooses a character and then that player dies. Yeah, literally every other killing demon could choose somebody and they die. And if they were good and solved the game, right, and they had a good idea of it, you get more agency, you choose somebody that you want to die, that happens. Oho doesn't get to do that. They're actually playing like a negative opposite game where they're, okay, maybe they're strong day one. They kill that Undertaker who was going to see their minion get executed. Cool. After that, what? I mean, some storytellers are very cruel and they make you have to guess rolls, or they will sync kills, or they'll make you guess rolls, or they'll kill like a Banshee or something. I honestly think the Oho's entire ability as its storyteller should be helping them kill basically like the best rolls in the script, because there's nothing else going on with the Oho. They don't have survival. They don't have misinfo. I think a lot of people build Oho onto scripts with no other ways for people to die, meaning that their extra ability to kill things isn't even there. So what is the Oho even doing? It's bad. It's also kind of redundant if you put a Spy Widow on there. It's like, okay, thanks for telling me that. I can just say those rolls now. Where's the fun in that? It's just a scuffed kind of demon in my opinion, but it's fine if you like it. I'm sorry if I pooped all over your favorite demon. All right, the Poe is incredibly strong, probably the strongest demon in the game, because it can go on other scripts that we'll talk about Shabaloth in a little bit, but scripts that the Shabaloth can't fit on, the Poe can definitely fit on. It works really well with all the BMR roles, Mastermind, Goon, Exorcist, Innkeeper, T-Lay, protection roles, things that stop deaths from happening or keep the game going, because the Oho has the ability to sync. And then it also works really well with additional killing type stuff on the script because of the triple kill that it'll put out there. A lot of times you'll just see a Poe with no other ways, so it becomes a really loud demon, which is probably okay. It's a strong-ass demon, right? Banshee on a script with a Poe is really good. It kind of offsets the fact that the Poe is about to rip through town. And I think that if you do make a lot of extra death on there, you're going to need to pair that with a lot of protection. So too much extra death, bad. This is more of a storyteller choice, by the way. So I want to run a script that has the option for Poes. Again, BMR. But you don't even need to do all that. You can just do some protection, maybe nothing, and just have low demon movement if you're going to do something along those lines. But the Poe is very, very, very strong. It can take a lot of people out pretty quickly. There is a positive side to it, though. If the Poe actually uses their ability, almost every character in the game will get a chance to use their ability. That's a good thing. Because night 2, if they sync to choose no one and then kill on night 3, everybody gets to play, which is kind of cool. It's like the good guy demon in a weird way. All right, Pukka. I love the Pukka. I've made a solo Pukka script called Stuck on You, and it's a lot of Pukka with lycanthrope interactions, as well as some other stuff. I think that those just work really well. The lycanthropes, very, very powerful, right? They get to choose and confirm good players. And the Pukka is out there trying to kill, and, you know, at least they're getting rewarded with some Droison, but they would like to just get their kills off, because the lycanthrope's killing players who are sus, and the Pukka's killing players who are never the demon. Those are great back and forths on fighting each other. I think that the Pukka, because of the chance that it can miss, it works really well with Assassin. It works well with Mastermind. It works well with Goon, Innkeeper. I think that it's a little rough with Scarlet Woman. I won't lie, I still have Scarlet Woman with Pukka on a few scripts. It's rough because there's no death that night, right? They wake up to choose. It could be kind of loud, to be honest. It's also rough with Monk. Again, this is not the worst thing in the world, but Monk, Pukka, the Monk actually can protect multiple players in a weird way. Because the monk goes before the Pukka, whenever they choose a player who either would die to the Pukka or would be Droison that night by the Pukka, neither happen. So they can actually go back and forth between two players and keep protecting those two players constantly until the monk itself is chosen. Kind of weird, very strong, but that's how it works. And then it's a little too strong if you have like a poisoner with a Pukka, but again, that's script dependent. I had poisoner with Pukka for a while, and a lot of people didn't like it. It was a little too much, as well as, I had a couple other things on there with Goon and such. But, choose your demons, I guess. Choose your battles when it comes to the amount of Droison that you're going to put on a given script. It looks like I have protection in here. There's no way that is the case. Let me delete that. Riot and protection, there's literally nothing that you... So protection is kind of a broad term here. Innkeeper, night protection stuff, that doesn't help you with Riot. Let's get that over there. So Riot has been changed. Riot now has minions, and those minions can really help fix the game. Previously, Riot could not bluff very well. Misinformation was really hard to come by. So players would just be able to find Riot. Now, there's a strong chance that Riot is still hiding out there for a few days because the minions don't change until potentially right before nominations. Meaning you can have Pit Hag, Sarah Madness, you can have a summoner doing things. Very, very cool. I like the changes. I think you can really do a lot with new Riot. You can even put it on the script with other demons. Just might be a little slower. Again, not my favorite, but I'm coming around to it a little more. I think that I was mentioning protection should be over here. Yeah, nothing on Riot is kills at night, right? The Riot themselves. So protection is kind of useless, and you're really only protecting for like, a night. So or 2 nights, I should say. So what's the point? Exorcist, absolutely wasteful, and yeah. The Shabaloth, I think extra deaths on a script are good, as long as you're pairing the Shabaloth with other demons that maybe don't kill as much. So pair it with less kill demons and extra death stuff. Protection for sure. Again, this mirrors a lot of the Poe, but Professor is the new one that's on here. Professor is probably not required with Shab, but really good for it. It just gives you that ability to hide the Shabaloth if you run a specific Jinx that I run. So that one where the Shabaloth wakes up night 1 and chooses 2 players really makes the Shabaloth a lot more interesting when it comes to Professor Reses. The Scarlet Woman, Barber, and Hatter all have a little bit of bad synergy with the Shabaloth. It's good for the evil team. It's really rough on the game. If the Shabaloth gets moved in, like, let's say Final 5 or Final 5. And let's say an execution happens. Scarlet Woman maybe catches the demon in Final 5. The Regurge tokens are no longer there. So the Scarlet Woman just kills 2 players in the game. Same thing can happen with a Barber and a Hatter. I don't like it. I think that's broken. So please don't do that. There's not much else to speak on for the Shabaloth. It's really strong. I have a hard time putting it on scripts. It's just that resurrection situation that Regurge is too much for the demon. It just makes it so loud that it almost has to be by itself. Vigormortis is one of the hardest demons to build a script around. Even S&V doesn't work well with the Vigormortis. I think the Vigormortis, because it can't Droison on night 1, there's a lot of roles that just interact with it poorly. Clockmaker, right? Seamstress that's used right away. Things like that are really bad for the Vigormortis. However, if you do a couple of modifications and build your script around the Vigormortis, it's really fun. So I have each night asterisk rolls, absolutely, right? That's what I'm saying, is night 2 and beyond, it's really good. I think Pit Hag is really good with the Vigormortis, so you can change out of the Vigormortis. I'm just kidding. Active minions, right? Because you're going to potentially kill a minion or 2 during the game to either, show misinfo or whatnot. I think the Vigormortis also works well with the Imp, with the Fang Gu, potentially with Lil Monsta, depending on what you got on there. The Vigormortis works really, really well with Zon. One of its biggest issues is this -1 outsider. I never understood that. I get it's just on there for S&V, but why? It is so rough for the... You can't even bluff outsider on S&V. The Zon fixes a lot of that because the Zon overrides the outsider count. It's almost like the Zon should have been on S&V. It is so good. And then finally, going back to the Scarlet Woman who I have on here, the reason I have it on here, but with a star, that star is not an each night star, right? The Scarlet Woman sucks with the Vigor because all the dead minions don't get their abilities once the demon dies and passes to Scarlet Woman. I'm saying ignore that. That's what the star is saying. So it's good if you ignore it. So Scarlet Woman in that world, let's talk to another custom rule. The Vigormortis, if they die and they pass to a Scarlet Woman, as long as a Vigormortis is in play, any killed minions from the Vigormortis keep their abilities and continue to poison. So it's like a global situation. That's how I fixed the Vigormortis slightly, at least for Scarlet Woman, Barber, etc. Barber's on the base script, by the way. Terrible. Yeah, so those are my main things. I think that start knowing roles are the bane of the Vigormortis' existence. All right, I see a lot of you guys out there scuffing up the Vortox on your scripts. And what I mean by that is you're putting a lot of, let's say, unconfirmable information together in a Vortox game with a lot of mechanical stuff and no way to solve for Vortox, maybe even with the drunk on script. What that leads to is, I guess, really bad gameplay of never knowing if it's a Vortox game because you don't have enough info to solve it. You know, half the 108. What is an investigator doing on half the 108 with a Vortox in play? Or a librarian that sees a drunk, for that matter. Literally nothing. And that's what I see on a lot of your guys' scripts. That's not helpful. So what you want is S&V style roles, at least a couple of them, right? A good amount of them, and make sure that the storyteller is actively putting some in play. Because if you don't do that, it's a lot of arbitrary info that doesn't help at all. Like if you see a drunk between two players in a Vortox game, who cares? Like you're not solving anything. That's not even, you can't even back that up to say anything useful about it except, okay, these two players are not the drunk. Okay, like that's not useful. I guess it is on a really, really small level, but yeah, don't screw over your players by making a script that has roles that don't work with the Vortox. Having said that, half the 108 is still pretty fun, even with that interaction. Now, Scarlet Woman's on here just because Scarlet Woman really works with most demons, unless I point out it specifically does not. It's good. It's good. And then the drunk synergy with Vortox is so good. Now remember, only townsfolk roles get townsfolk abilities get misinformation in a Vortox, right? I pulled the bounty hunter token in a Vortox game, and I'm the drunk. I can get real information, legitimate information, because the drunk is an outsider. It's so good. Love that synergy. I think SMV should have had the drunk added to it. My opinion. Now, Droison poison rolls, they become a lot less useful on Vortox scripts because they don't do anything, right? If you're Droison and a Vortox is in play and you're a townsfolk role, getting Droison information, you're already getting false info due to the Vortox, and that cannot be overridden by poison or Droison. Okay? There's a couple of synergy, like the VI I could throw on here, Village Idiot, because the Village Idiot has to get false info, but there is an arbitrary rule that people run where you have, I'm going to do it. I'm going to throw VI on here, guys. So VI, arbitrary rule. The drunk VI, so the one that got labeled as the drunk when there's multiple VIs in play, they can get arbitrary information in Vortex game. Run it. That's TPI. They've encouraged that one. Do it. That's a great one. Now, mechanical roles I have on here is a rough pairing. They're rough because if you just do a bunch of those, you're not going to solve for a Vortex game. They're fine. You can have mechanical roles. I mean, Snake Charmer specifically is on S&V. Just don't do too many. They just don't help you solve for Vortex. So if you have a limited amount of info roles, they're not really going to do much with a Vortex in play, and they'll probably just lose because they don't have a good solve for the game. All right, one of our least used demons that we run is the Yaggababble. I think I've seen more lunatic Yaggababbles than regular Yaggababbles. It's because a lot of people have a rough time saying the phrase, and storytellers have a rough time killing appropriately and making a phrase. So that's more of a storyteller and player situation. But if you're trying to build a script around it, these are some useful ones. Lunatic with Yaga is really good. It's similar to the Oho, right? Somebody just dies, things die, they think that they're doing stuff. It's also really fun because you can do dumb phrases for the Lunatic. Gossip with Yaggababble. Now, this is a controversial one. I'm almost willing to put it in the rough pairings because I've heard from a lot of the unofficial and potentially Reddit. I don't know. I haven't browsed a lot of the gossip stuff on there. That you guys don't like the gossip Yaggababble interaction. I think it's fine, in my opinion. I think if somebody is gossiping and you don't want the kills to happen, you can kill that player. And this is the issue that people say, right? And so I'm not really helping. You're saying there's no difference for a gossip figuring out if their gossip went through versus if a Yaga said their phrase. The Yaga would have to say their phrase multiple times to get multiple kills, right? So that does actually help you solve that. Okay. I don't know. It seems like a personal issue if you do think that way, and I don't have a problem with it, but that's my thoughts on it. Golem works really, really well with Yaggababble. I think this is a blessing for demonhood in general, but you can fake a Golem punch, which is one of the hardest things to bluff in the game, till Boffin came out. You can just punch somebody and be like, yep. It's really cool. And because the Yaga doesn't have any Droison, you can add a Poisoner or a Marionette on there, right? And that'll add it. So this is just a placeholder for that. The reason that the Scarlet Woman is on rough pairings is because there won't be a kill that night, likely. However, if you listen to your minions, specifically the Scarlet Woman, and you hear them saying a phrase, you could log that as well. It's a little bit extra upkeep for the storyteller, but that can be the phrase, and it does look backwards. Therefore, if you do put it on script, you can still get the extra kills. And protection rolls, unless you run the Yaga like I said earlier, right? Then protection rolls are useless in the Yaga script, which I hate because Yaga has multiple deaths. That's the main reason why I like doing the protection custom roll that I do where the Yaga picks, is because there's multiple deaths and you can't even stop them. It's boring. Okay. All right, the last one on here is probably the roughest one in general to just build a script around, is the Zombuul. People don't like waiting for games to end. They like nice, fast-paced games, and Zombuul tends to slow that shit all the way down. So you do want extra deaths. You basically want to recreate BMR if you're going to make the Zombuul. I think the Boffin has done a lot of work for the Zombuul, allowing you to do things like, you can even give a Zombuul the Gambler or Acrobat ability so they can kill themselves on a night where the Zombuul wouldn't be allowed to kill. That's interesting. Gossip, you can give a Gossip Boffin situation to the Zombuul. Things like that. I think it also pairs well with Yaga/Oho because of the lack of deaths on some nights, and some Yagas are just unwilling to say their phrase. Rough pairings and things that I would absolutely avoid: Barber, Pit Hag, Hatter, Scarlet Woman. Do not. Just don't. Now, Oracle is probably rough just because it's going to signal a Zombuul game, especially if it's been extremely obvious with the kills. Yeah, it might just tell you who is the Zombuul once that number ticks up, and they've got time to do it as well. But you can make that work. It's just a little rough. And then the Lycan, a lot of people hate Lycan Zombuul, so I threw it on here. I'm indifferent. I do think it makes the game hard to solve, but you can build around that. Right? It's also pretty cool that they get the choice to eventually just kill themselves if they think that it's a Zombuul game, but they're still confirming good players. And remember, a Lycan killing a player means that player is not the Zombuul. I put an asterisk on that as well because, yeah, Zombuul could just self-target every night if they think a Lycan's in play. It's kind of silly. So yeah, it is rough. Probably a little too rough, so avoid that. Remember, the demon is still just one character on the script, unless it's Legion or Riot. After you've built up your script, your first draft, with your selected demons, right? Always do a thorough pass-through of the whole script. Check your misinfo, check your info, make sure it works together and has good synergy, and balance that bad boy, right? The demon's not going to carry the whole weight of the script. It does set the theme for the script, though. A lot of people look at a script and they say, what demons are on here? Oh, no, I'm not playing that. Or, oh, I love that demon. I'll love to play that. That is more true for demons than probably any other role, save for Heretic or Organ Grinder type stuff. So, yeah, if you like this video, please hit that subscribe button so I know to make more Script Tease content in the future. Thank you for watching. Peace.